Moving on to the Adept level, we're going to do some unit conversions, but not just of one-dimensional lengths. We're going to look at converting measurements involving area and volume. So to start, I have drawn here a unit square, and I say unit square because it is 1 inch by 1 inch. And here I've copied it, only what I've done is I've converted the inches to centimeters. So even though these squares are exactly the same, this is actually not a unit square because it is now in centimeters. It is not a 1 by 1 centimeter square. So the area of this one would just be length times width. So that would be 1 inch times 1 inch. And 1 times 1, of course, is 1. Inch times inch, though, we have inches squared, so 1 inch squared. Here, to find the area, it's the same thing, but now I'm in centimeters. So it's 2.54 centimeters times 2.54 centimeters. Okay, well, that is not done as easily as the first one. I get 6.4516, and this is centimeters squared. Okay, so if you have 1 inch, that's the same as 2.54 centimeters. If I have 1 square inch, that is equivalent to 6.4516 square centimeters. All right, well, what does this have to do with converting area? Well, let's just look at some conversions. So involving length, we know that 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. But if we want to talk about area, we begin by taking the conversion that we're already familiar with, and we just square the units. All right. Now, if I stopped here, this would be absolutely wrong, because we've seen from up here that 1 square inch is not equal to 2.54 centimeters squared. It's equal to 6.4516 centimeters squared. So we also, if we square the units, we must also square the numbers. Now, when you're squaring the number 1, that is optional because 1 squared is still 1. So I'll just show that. Because 1 to the power of anything is still 1. But you have to square the 2.54. Okay, so this is a conversion for length, which we've done before. And this is a conversion for area from inches to centimeters. Okay, well, before we go on to actually solving some problems, just want to draw your attention to the calculator picture I have up here. If you have this particular model, this button over here, it says x squared. What that does is it takes whatever number that is currently on your display and it multiplies it by itself. So if you wanted to square the number 7, you type 7, hit your square button, and then I believe you have to hit equals. If you have a different model, perhaps when you hit the square button, it'll give you your answer immediately. It just depends on the model you have. If you want to raise a number to a power other than 2, you could use this button. It kind of looks like a little hat. So this requires you to give it the exponent. So if you use that button, let's say you wanted to do 7 to the power of 3, okay, what you'd push on the calculator is 7, hit that button, the number 3, and then you'd have to hit equals, and that would give you your answer. You should also note that this button can also be used for 2, okay? It's just squaring numbers is the most common, so most calculators have a shortcut feature for that. Now, if you have a different model of calculator and the power button, you don't have that little hat button. You might have a button that says y to the power of x or x to the power of y. So just have a look around and see if you can find it. All right, let's do a problem. We have, question says, what is the area of a 10-inch by 8-inch rectangle in square centimeters? Okay, so we just want to find the area of a rectangle, which is pretty easy, but then we want to express that area in square centimeters. There's actually 2 methods that I'm can apply, and I'll demonstrate both. The first method I have here is just calculate the area first, meaning I'm just going to work with inches. I'm not going to convert these dimensions to centimeters yet. All right, so let's just find the area. After all, that's what we're looking for. So the area of a rectangle is length times width. So this is 10 inches. I'll go back to IN times 8 inches. Okay, and of course, the answer is 80 inches squared. Okay, now I want to convert this area in square inches to square centimeters. So we do that exactly like we would before in unit analysis, only we're in inches squared. Okay, now we're going from inches to centimeters. So if inches are on the top here, I need inches on the bottom. So I know that for 1 inch, there are 2.54 centimeters. So this step should be familiar. However, we can't stop here because this is a conversion factor for length. Okay, we need them to be squared. So if I want these units to match, well, I can just square them. But remember, if you have to square these units, you must also square these numbers. And again, squaring the 1 here, that's completely optional. You don't have to do that. I just like to do it to show consistency, that's all. Okay, so we have the number 80, and we're multiplying it by 2.54 squared. So we're going to use the square button on our calculator. So I'm going to take 80, multiply that by 2.54 squared, hit the equals, and I get 516.128, and I am now in centimeters squared. Okay? So that's how you use unit analysis, but for area. I'm going to demonstrate another method for the same problem, but this one involves converting the dimensions first. So before we find the area, I'm going to actually take 10 inches and 8 inches and convert those to centimeters, and then multiply them to find the area. Nothing says we can't do that. So 10 inches. Okay, so this is just a one-dimensional measurement involving length. So this is 1 inch. So this has to be 2.54 centimeters. These cancel out. So of course, well, multiplying by 10 is easy. I just get 25.4 centimeters. Okay? And I also need to convert 8 inches. Okay, so this is a review from the last section. It's pretty easy. Oops. Okay. Cross that out. And 2.54 times 8 is 20.32 centimeters. All right, so now we can find the area. So the area would just be 25.4 centimeters times 20.32 centimeters. There we go. And I get, well, surprise, surprise, exactly the same thing, 516.128, but I'm now in centimeters, running out of room here, squared. Okay? So I get the same answer. But I would argue that this one is a little bit more tedious. I had to do 2 separate conversions and then find the area, whereas this method, I just found the area very easily, and then I only had to do 1 conversion with a little twist. So I prefer that one. Question 2. A piece of paper has an area of 603 square centimeters. Convert the area to inches squared, or square inches. Well, the problem with this one is, notice how there are no dimensions given. They just give us the area. So it's kind of difficult to apply this method to over here because I have no dimensions to convert. All I have to do is take this area and convert it to inches squared. So I'm just going to apply method 1, which I would argue is easier. So I take the area that I want to convert. Okay. This is already in centimeters squared, so I don't need to do anything with that number. I'm not actually changing the measurement itself. And we want to go to inches squared. Well, for centimeters to square to cancel, they've got to be on the bottom. So I know that in 2.54 centimeters, that's 1 inch. Okay, but the dimensions of the units don't match. So to make them match, I can square them. Okay, but I must also square the numbers. Very, very important. Don't leave this out. Okay, and again, you can choose to square the 1 or not square it. That doesn't matter. But the 2.54 squared is on the bottom, so I'm just going to divide. So with my calculator, I take 603 and I divide that by 2.54, hit the square button, equals, and I get approximately 93 point, I'll go to the nearest tenth, 5. And I am now in inches squared. Okay? Because this centimeter squared and that centimeter squared cancel, and I now have inches squared left over. Okay? So I didn't need the dimensions. Okay? I have no idea what shape this piece of paper is in. It could be rectangular, triangular, heck, it could be in the shape of a star. We have no idea. We just know that the total area is 603 centimeters squared. So that is our conversion done. Let's do another one. We have a small container and it holds 75 cubic inches of water. What is its volume in cubic centimeters? Okay, it's not very common that volume is expressed in cubic inches. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not very common. But notice how the dimensions, okay, this little number here is a 3. So we're working in 3 dimensions. So we're not talking about area, we're talking about volume. And again, we don't know what shape this container is in. It could be a box-like container, it could be cylindrical. I have no idea. All we know is the volume. So we write down the measurement that we have. So this is 75 cubic inches. And we want to go to, well, centimeters, but in this case centimeters cubed. Okay. So the inches need to cancel. So I know that 1 inch has 2.54 centimeters. Okay. But the dimensions of the units, they don't match. This is 3, so I need to cube these. All right. But as before with area, I need to cube these numbers as well. Do not cube the 75. Okay? This is already a 3-dimensional measurement. If you cube it, then you've actually changed all the information in the question and you won't get the right answer. Okay. So let's work this out. Now, depending on what model of calculator you have, you might actually have a cube button, just like your squared button. But if you don't, you need to identify where your power button is. So these cubic inches cancel. So with my calculator, I'm going to go 75 times 2.54, hit my power button, and then I have to type in 3, then equals, and I get approximately 1,229. This is cubic centimeters. Okay, and here, I'll put a box around that. You could also express this in milliliters. Okay, so that would be, it's a nice thing about the metric system. There you go. Both of those would be acceptable.